Welcome back. Next, we're going to add in our navbar up top. So to begin, I'm going to make a navbar component, navbar.js, and we're going to use a lot of Bootstrap here. Basically, all of our styling for the navbar will be coming from Bootstrap. So the very first thing we need to do inside of our navbar is, instead of returning a div, I'm going to return a nav, just to be more semantic. And the Bootstrap classes, so class name, is navbar, and then navbar expand large. So this is saying that it should expand, so it should be collapsed at extra small, small, and medium, and then expand. When I say collapsed, it means that the hamburger icon appears and it becomes a drop down or a slide out. Okay, we can play with that value later. And then I'm going to give it a color. So navbar dark is for the text, which will make the text light because the background will be dark. It's kind of confusing. And then inside of that, we'll start with an anchor tag and give it a class name of navbar-brand. And then React will yell at me, so I'm going to give it an href for now. We actually probably should make this a link tag eventually. I'll just give it a dead nothing. And then we'll just call this dog shelter or dog app or something. And that will be our brand of our navbar. It should show up on the top left once we actually use our navbar. So let's add it in instead of our app.js. Right now we just have our switch with routes. So I'm going to add a div wrapper. We'll refactor some of this later on, but we'll do our div, and then inside of here at the very top on all pages we'll render the navbar, which we need to import. So import navbar from /navbar. So it doesn't matter what the route is, we want that navbar to be up top. And there it is. And here's our navbar brand. Okay, so that works. The next thing we have to worry about is getting all of those links to show up. And remember, it's supposed to be dynamic. So we shouldn't hard code in a link for whiskey, one for Hazel, one for Tubby. And the way I'm going to do this is by passing down those dogs. So when we render the navbar, we'll pass in dogs equals this.props.dogs. Now technically all we really need is a list of the names, and then we could just use the name to generate our link, but this is fine. We don't need to extract. This is a very small amount of data. If we had some really massive data set, then maybe it would be better to just create a list of names so that we could create the links, or just have the links pre-made and have those in an array. But anyway, this is fine. Honestly, if you had a really large set, then you probably wouldn't be creating a link in your navbar for each dog. That would be quite crazy. Okay, so back in our navbar, what we're going to do is just start by hard coding in a couple of links. But first, we have kind of a lot of markup for Bootstrap to make the navbar, the toggler work. So bear with me here as I type all of this. You may want to fast forward. So we're going to do navbar toggler on a button, and then give it type set to button, data toggle equals collapse. This is all coming from Bootstrap. And then data target needs to be set to something. That will be an ID that we need to assign. So a standard name they use in the docs is navbar nav, so I'll use that just in case you're copying and pasting from the docs. Then we have some attributes that help with accessibility. So aria controls. These technically aren't necessary to get the navbar to show up, but they're important. And then we have aria expanded, again for accessibility equals false, and then a label for accessibility purposes. And this button should toggle navigation. The reason we need that one in particular is that this button will show up as a hamburger icon, and it's not immediately clear to someone using a screen reader what they're looking at, or that's not a good way of putting it, what they're hearing or what the screen reader is currently reading. And then inside of this button tag, I accidentally got rid of the closing button tag. Inside, we're going to put a span with class name of navbar toggler-icon. That is from Bootstrap. And that gives us the hamburger icon. And then after this button, we're going to make another div. And this one needs to have a class name of collapse, navbar-collapse. And then it needs to have an ID that matches whatever we said data target was. So navbar nav. Perfect. And inside of here is where we actually add the links. So we'll add a UL with the class name of navbar nav, navbar dash nav. And then each link that we put in here will be an li, and it needs to have the class name of nav item, nav dash item. Oh boy. Okay, so we have that done. Let's begin with our first. Let's just hard code a link that says home, and then let's add a couple more, home and I don't know, back. So we'll change those, but if all is working, we should have some links show up. And then as I resize, you can see that everything collapses. Perfect. And then inside of this li, we add our link tag, and let's just add a home link to start, and we give it a class name of nav-link. It's a lot of work. And we need to specify a to prop on this link. So if this is home, let's just have it go to slash, well, we don't really have a slash, we'll do slash dogs. We'll figure out those routes in a bit. And we have our navbar, and you'll see it will collapse right here. And it works. It's kind of overkill to have it collapse right now, but we'll add in the rest of our nav links. So instead of hard coding all of this, what we're going to do, well, we probably want a home link, but we want the other links for each dog. So I'm going to make a variable up top inside of my render, and let's just call this, let's just go with dog links equals this.props.dogs.map for each dog. And what are we going to do for each one? We'll make a link with the class name of navlink. However, instead of a regular link, I'm going to change this to be a nav link. And remember, nav link is what gives us the active class when it is the currently active link. So I'm just going to copy this right here, put that in here. So that's what we are returning. But instead of home, we're going to do dog.name. And then the URL is going to change a little bit, because instead of /dogs, it's going to be /dogs/ something else. So I'm going to use my curly braces, backticks, /dogs/ and then $, curly braces again to add my value in of dog.name. So whatever the name is, if it is whiskey, it will be /dogs/whiskey, and the link text will say whiskey. And then we have class name is navlink. And then finally, React will yell at me if I don't give it a key. So let's just do dog.name, because we're going to have a list of these that we're rendering. Finally, we will render these all the way down here. After our nav link to go home, we'll just add in all of those navs, or all of those nav links, which are just called dog links. And it looks like I forgot to wrap each of these in a nav item tag. So we'll end that li there. Okay. So now, after this li right there for our home link, we can add in our dog links. There we go. So let's see if it's working. I click on whiskey, I see whiskey, and it is currently active, although this is also active, and we've seen that before. What we need to do is go back to our home nav link, and well, on all of them, we can specify exact. Save. Now we only get one of them. So if I go to home, it is active, but only when I'm at home. Whiskey, Hazel, Tubby. I add a new dog in, and we'll have a new link set up perfectly for them. And the collapse should still work. There we go. Perfect. And you can see React is still yelling at me about the key prop. We did add a key, but since we wrapped each nav link in an li, it needs to go on the li. Otherwise, React can't keep track of things, and it gets very upset. So now that warning goes away. We still have the warning about the href attribute, which is in our navbar right here. And instead of a anchor tag, I would probably just make this a simple link. Doesn't need to be a nav link really. And it will be navbar-brand, and then to will be /dogs. So it's sort of redundant because we already have our link for home. I need to import link as well. And there we go. We have the navbar brand over here. I can click on it to go home, as you can see, but I can also click home right here. Okay, so that is the navbar. That's pretty much all there is to it.